And I don't think either of those two would have been able to cope. They'd been anywhere else. And that was the only good thing that happened, was that they were there. And they had that structure, they had people around them.
No one expected the storm to start with a single unmarked envelope. It arrived on a quiet morning, slipping through the royal postal system like any other document. But when Princess Anne held it, she felt a knot in her stomach. The wax seal was foreign, and the handwriting looked hauntingly familiar. When she opened it, her life changed forever. Inside was not just information. It was a ticking time bomb carrying the final secret that Diana never revealed. Before we explore what this means for the royal family, subscribe so you don't miss an update. The envelope that broke the silence. It started like any other gray morning in the palace. Piles of paperwork merging into one another in a constant flow of decisions that had worn me down. But this envelope caught my attention, sitting on the desk among the usual clutter. It had no family crest or kingdom stamp, just a deep red wax seal that looked unusual, challenging me to ignore it. I almost handed it to my secretary for a moment, following my usual routine. But something pulled at me, almost like a half-remembered dream. My fingers hovered over the seal, and my heart raced for no apparent reason. As if the paper held trouble. I snapped the wax open and unfolded the single sheet. The first line read, "Private Laboratory Analysis," then the following words jumped out. "DNA test results." I quickly scanned the names, stopping at one that resonated deeply with me. Diana Spencer. Below that is a name I didn't recognize, foreign and unfamiliar. The last line hit me hardest. A positive match, a strong genetic connection. I had no doubts. It was just a fact that shook me. Cold fear raced down my spine, making me sweat despite the warmth of the fire. My carefully structured life, filled with well-planned schedules and explicit rules, felt unstable, as if it might collapse. My hands trembled as I reread the lines, hoping for a mistake, a mix-up. But the ink remained firm, each word digging deeper, revealing a huge truth, far more significant than any gossip or media story. This was no minor issue. Science was precise. It built walls. Who sent this to me? Why did it come now? What turmoil would it bring to the royal family? The entire foundation of inheritance and lineage felt shaken. I recall Diana speaking quietly during family gatherings. Her glances hiding something others dismissed as sadness or media pressure. Had she left clues leading me to this moment? My chest felt tight and my breath was shallow. We had always relied on clear lines, knowing who came from where and who had what duties. This changed everything. It wasn't just gossip. It was a deep, life-altering crisis. I carefully folded the paper and hid it in my desk drawer, locking it away. But even as I closed the drawer, I felt something had changed forever. My world and the entire system we had relied on for years felt stained and damaged. The silence in the palace felt heavy, as if the walls were watching and waiting. I looked at the gardens outside, beautiful and serene, but they felt meaningless against the storm brewing inside me. I had always been the problem solver who took on burdens without complaint. But this was the big to ignore. A crack in the structure was forming, spreading like spider webs. What I didn't realize yet was the bigger issue. This was just the beginning. Old secrets from Diana were starting to resurface, ready to make their presence known. Diana's breadcrumbs, whispers from a silenced princess. Diana played many roles. A beloved princess, a superstar, and a mother who would do anything for her sons. But underneath it all, she was a strategist. She dropped hints in places where few looked, long before the tunnel became a focus. She believed someone would eventually need the clues. Now, with the lab report sitting heavily on Anne's desk, these old hints made sense. Like a lock opening. The past wasn't buried. It was waiting in the shadows, like a live wire, and felt a buzz of shock from the paper. Yet her sharp mind began to work, searching for connections. She had thought Diana's odd behaviors were just the stress of life as a famous woman. But looking back, those moments felt different now, clearer, like puzzle pieces falling into place. Diana's diaries, which were meant to be private, held a deeper meaning in a new light. Phrases like truth to raw for daylight, which seemed like dramatic flair, now felt like evidence. Diana wasn't just venting. She was sending out signals. Unremembered those diaries. Diana had shared bits of them carefully, using the leather cover like armor. She spoke of safekeeping and leaving signs for someone who would understand. And had nodded back then, not grasping the true meaning behind the words. That map was real. Diana had buried clues. Then there were the letters hidden away at Althorpe, far from the watchful eyes of the palace. These letters hinted at deep betrayals, more than flings or political games. One note tucked into a letter to her son struck in hard. When they're ready, it'll click. Unn had thought it referred to William and Harry, a mother's hope. But now, with the report looming over her, they seemed bigger. It could refer to her, or anyone brave enough to follow the trail the Crown wanted to hide. Unn recalled their private conversations where quarters couldn't listen. Diana had spoken about the machine with a cold anger. Unn initially thought it was about the press which had relentlessly pursued her. But there was something deeper in Diana's gaze. It wasn't just the tabloids, but the whole establishment. The Crown prioritizing image over truth, silencing honesty. Diana had fought against it, but it wore her down, feeling inspired. Ann's mind turned to a thin folder she once found at Althorpe. It sat behind crates with Diana's handwriting on top. At first, it seemed unimportant, just notes and sketches. But at the top, it boldly said, "Child." She had dismissed it then. Now, it seemed like a clear signal. Diana had left a clue in plain sight, intended for those who knew to look for it, and could see everything coming together slowly. There were no accidents here. Every word, every quiet comment was part of Diana's struggle. She was protecting her true self in case things turned against her. Unn felt a lump in her throat as the weight of this responsibility hit her. Diana had counted on a future ally to find these clues. And now that ally was her, holding onto the thread, the erased name, a bloodline buried in royal archives, and felt confused and overwhelmed like she had lost her way in a maze. The details she discovered came together too easily and felt wrong. What worried her most was not whether Diana caused this mess, but who else might be involved. Every painting in her life hinted at forgotten names, which Diana mentioned only in private. If those names became known, they could shake the royal family. Unn reread the lab report and felt like it was mocking her. Diana's DNA matched J.K.'s initials, which were buried in fine print, but connected her sister-in-law to a hidden part of family history. She handed the initials to her trusted aide. "Look into this. Find the hidden details." Days later, her aide reported troubling findings, missing documents, altered dates, and gaps that suggested a cover-up. A small clinic across the channel had records of a birth not listed anywhere else, dated during the times Diana claimed to be on charity work, now looking suspiciously like an alibi. The doctor linked to this clinic had abruptly left the palace years ago, raising questions. When Unn connected Diana's unexplained breaks to the hidden medical records, the rumors about a spare heir felt more serious as the facts fell into place. Unn realized Diana's family ties were messier than anyone had said. If this child existed, influential people worked hard to hide the truth. Unn felt a chill of fear without clear proof, sensing that unseen forces were at work. Charles's confession. The pact that buried Diana's truth. Years ago, Charles wore a mask that Unn couldn't understand. It showed a mix of surrender and control, hiding secrets, but when DNA evidence came to light, that mask finally broke, revealing painful truths. In the study, he sat alone in a large chair, shadows shifting like accusations, and placed the report on the desk, expecting him to deny everything. Instead, he nodded without surprise, showing that he recognized the truth. A ghost he had lived with for decades. The air felt heavy and betrayal twisted in her chest. She had expected him to defend himself, but his silence confirmed that he had carried this burden alone. When their eyes met, she saw something real and raw, stripped of pretense. She broke the silence and asked, "How long? Charles, why did you bury it?" She laid out everything. The child, the cover-up, the lies. He didn't deny it. He sighed and said, "It's real. I knew we buried it afterward to survive." He explained the hush-hush decisions made after the crash were for survival, not spite. They acted quickly, hiding evidence and erasing a child's existence to protect themselves. To him, it was policy. To her, it was a betrayal. Anger built within Anne as she confronted him for sacrificing Di's truth for appearances. He remained calm, looking at the rug like he had practiced this moment many times. Finally, he said, "Duty sometimes takes away things you can't explain. Outsiders wouldn't understand. The firm had to make tough choices." She stared at her brother, who had become a stranger, guarding a lie that ruined everything. He had known the truth and chose to stay silent, allowing Di's last words to fade away until they returned through her actions. Camilla's leverage, the queen of secrets who mastered the game. If Charles was involved in something shady, who else was? Camilla. She stayed calm during royal troubles, quietly collecting secrets. Her power came from the information she held, especially about Diana. Unn confronted her in a side room after Charles's news and presented the facts, DNA evidence, and logs that led to chaos. Instead of panicking, Camilla stayed composed with a small smile. Camilla said she had known for a long time, picking up hints and bits of information. She didn't show off what she knew, she used it as leverage, while others got caught up in scandals. She quietly gained power, holding essential secrets, and was angry about Camilla using Diana's story. But felt trapped, Camilla reminded her that the throne was fragile and full of risks. "You play the noble role, I deal with the dangers," she said, unrealized till late that the stakes were higher than she thought. Then Camilla said, "The boy is closer than you think," and felt a chill, understanding the situation had changed. Camilla had taken control, thriving in a way others feared, as in left. She was haunted by those words, "closer than you think." The living storm, Diana's son, emerges from exile. He had lived on the edge, never fully experiencing the world around him. Instead, he watched his mother's story unfold through the eyes of strangers. Now whispers about him were returning to the palace that had erased him from memory, and followed Diana's trail through. Worn letters, each faded word drawing her in until a familiar face appeared. The eyes were stormy blue and unreadable, suggesting a history of hidden emotions. After she clashed with Camilla, and instincts sharpened, this story was alive. There was warmth and a heartbeat beyond the palace that could change everything. Determined and contacted trusted archivists who gathered what the palace tried to hide. After weeks of research, she found a name that seemed ordinary but came with clues from secret birth clinic. Records showing a child raised far from the royal spotlight. Though the palace erased him from their records, gaps existed, as in uncovered more photos. Each showed features that reminded her of Diana. It was clear that blood ties were strong. The man had grown up with more of Harry's boldness than William's calm. Diana's letters revealed her urgent need to protect her son in her final months. She wrote about hidden meetings and her wish to shield him from the royal family. Unrealized he had known about his identity, piecing it together while staying quiet out of loyalty to his mother. Now Anne was ready to confront the truth. This was not just a side quest. The past was colliding with the present and demanded attention. The vow in the shadows. Anne's promise to Diana's son. He crossed from ghost to flesh, becoming a man with Diana's essence. Anne had always been the strong one, fixing problems without hesitation. But nothing prepared her for locking eyes with him. His blue eyes reminded her of Di, warm, but also filled with pain. In that moment, everything came crashing down. She faced years of buried grief and loyalty that held her tight. She wasn't looking at a stranger. She saw Di's unfinished story, which deeply affected her. He walked in quietly, without any grandeur. Just him with his determined jaw and soft, but strong gaze. They stood in silence for a moment and the air felt heavy. Even Anne, the strong fixer, felt overwhelmed by emotions bigger than duty. He broke the silence and shared his story. Fragments of his childhood pieced together from Di's influence. Unrealized he had built a bond between them as he spoke, guiding him from afar. He grew up in Di's shadow, tied by blood, yet often ignored. Listened closely until his voice caught at the mention of a difficult night, revealing the emptiness left by Di's absence. In that moment, she understood. Di had trusted her more than anyone else. The clues Di left behind were meant for her to follow. This was not just an old story. It was important. She saw in him not an enemy, but someone sharing Di's burden, human and real. Tears filled her eyes as he expressed his need not for fame, but to be recognized as Di's son. As she sat there, her defenses crumbled. She cried for the family connection she had never entirely accepted. Her loyalty broke. The bond of blood was stronger than duty. She met his gaze and promised that Di's legacy would not vanish. This story, once hidden under rules and lies, would someday emerge. It all felt meaningful in that room with his hand on hers. The reckoning unveiled. Anne's defiance shatters the crown, and bravely confronted the royal family directly. People often viewed royals as untouchable. But that day, under bright lights, she broke that image with help from an unexpected ally. She spoke in a way that changed history. The truth could no longer be hidden, and struggled with her choice, knowing that going against Charles and Camilla could harm her long-standing relationships. However, after a decisive moment with her brother, she felt she could not ignore the heavy truth. She would not let Diana's silence continue. She organized a press conference to take control away from the palace. When the news broke, chaos followed. Charles and Camilla hurried to manage the situation and remained strong and said, "This is Diana's son." The world reacted strongly. News headlines poured out and the monarchy faced heavy criticism. Inside the palace, fear grew. Charles's polished image began to crumble, and for the first time, it was not the royal story being told, but the people. In a key moment, her brother said, "She's my mom." Full stop, and